The maids moved around her in silence, brushing her light brown hair. Erin sat still before the mirror, her hands resting lightly on her lap, watching her own reflection disappear beneath the mask of royalty. Tonight was the Emperor's monthly visit. The Night Royal couple was expected to share a bed. Only, he never came. He hadn't once in 3 years. Still, the attendants dressed her carefully, afraid to neglect the ceremony, and escorted her to the king's chamber, the scent of lavender candles filling the air. Her gaze drifted to the empty chair across from her, and for a moment, she let out a small laugh, the kind that never reached her eyes. "It's been 3 years," she whispered to herself. 3 years since I became the Emperor's wife. Once I was just a palace laundry maid. No name, no family, no future. She leaned back, staring down at the carved floor. When the real Princess of Florna passed away, they said she jumped from the Western Tower rather than marry the cold widower king. I thought it was only another rumor. But that same night, they dragged me from the laundry quarters. She smiled faintly at the memory. The panic, the disbelief. They told me I looked like her. Same light brown hair, same soft skin, but our eye color were different. A poor girl who scrubbed linens suddenly chosen to replace royalty. She touched her cheek, remembering how the court ladies had painted her face and drilled her for weeks on how to speak, eat, and breathe like a princess. 1 month before the wedding, they made me study every noble custom. How to bow, how to read, how to smile without showing teeth. I was a maid pretending to be a princess, and nobody even asked if I wanted it. As if my life was worth so little it could be rewritten overnight. Her voice softened, but I didn't mind. At least I had food, a bed, warm water to bathe. Things a common maid could only dream of without working her arms raw. The candlelight flickered over her face as she sank back into the bed. She glanced toward the door, empty as always. "Not that I expect him," she murmured. "Why would he come?" They said the Emperor of Eldrinth had lost his soul the day his first wife passed away. A childbirth gone wrong. Both mother and infant gone before dawn. Some said he screamed so loud that night the palace trembled. Others whispered he had gone mad and turned his grief into cruelty. Now, the entire empire feared his silence more than his wrath. "The man I married isn't a husband," Erin said softly. "He's a shadow wearing a crown." The council had begged him to remarry. For an heir, they said. That 3 years had passed, and he had never spoken a word to her. She saw him only during ceremonies, distant, untouchable, and utterly alone. Sometimes, when the palace grew too quiet, she would close her eyes and imagine the hum of the laundry hall, the laughter of other maids, the smell of soap and morning dew. Home, a place where people noticed her voice. But here, she was an echo in a grand palace, dressed in borrowed jewels, waiting for a man who would never come. Outside, the wind brushed against the window panes, whispering through the curtains. "Still," she said to herself, eyes closing, "even a shadowed life is better than none at all." And with that quiet thought, the false princess drifted into sleep. The days in the palace passed like quiet dreams, too quiet sometimes. Every morning, the servants bowed and murmured greetings that felt rehearsed. They filled her room with flowers she hadn't asked for, served her meals she hardly tasted, and asked if she wished to summon the Emperor, knowing full well he would not come. Erin had long stopped asking. Instead, she found her peace in small things: the rustle of pages, the chirp of birds outside the window, the smell of ink and paper. But some evenings, when the stillness grew heavy, she would slip out. She'd change into the simple dress of a palace maid and cloak to cover her face. It was easy for her to sneak out because the guards were never watching her. In that disguise, she could breathe again. No guards followed her, no courtiers bowed. She could walk through the servant courtyards and markets as no one at all. Just Erin, the girl she once was. And for a while, she was happy. That evening was no different. The sun was soft and gold, touching the marble paths as she walked back home toward the far edge of the palace, where the palace walls met the garden. That was when she heard it, shouting, harsh and sharp, breaking silence. 2 boys stood by the fountain, shouting at a smaller child crouched against the base. "Get up, orphan," one shouted. "You think you're one of us?" The other sneered, his voice full of cruel delight. The smaller boy tried to shield himself, but his arms were thin and trembling. The dirt struck his shoulder. He didn't even cry out, just flinched and lowered his head. Before Erin realized it, her voice cut through the air. "Enough!" The two older boys froze, turning to see her standing there, fury burning behind her eyes. Her maid's cloak fluttered slightly in the wind. "Do your parents know you spend your evenings throwing stones at children?" Her voice was calm, but the sharpness of her tone made them both step back. The older one muttered an excuse. The younger grabbed his sleeve, and together they ran, disappearing into the shadows. Erin turned back to the boy, curly blonde hair and blue eyes. He stared up at her, wide-eyed and wary, as if unsure whether she was another enemy. She knelt slowly, lowering her voice to something gentle. "It's all right. I won't hurt you." He didn't speak. His lips were dry, his face pale, dust and sweat streaking his cheeks. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly, reaching out a hand. He hesitated, then finally let her help him stand. His clothes were torn, and she could feel the tremor in his small fingers as he steadied himself. "Where do you live? I'll walk you home." But he only looked at her, silent, expression unreadable. His eyes, cold and distant, seemed older than his age. Erin tried again, smiling faintly. "All right. If you don't want to talk, then just point. Show me where to take you." The boy's eyes widened suddenly, and he shook his head, violently as if begging her not to. "You don't want to go home?" He didn't answer. Only his grip on her sleeve grew tighter, his whole body trembling. Erin's heart softened. Something in his silence frightened her more than words could have. The sky had already begun to darken, and she knew the palace maids would soon notice her absence. If she returned late again, the head attendant would start asking questions, and if the guards found her outside the royal wing, they might recognize her despite her disguise. But she couldn't leave the boy here. "Fine," she murmured, glancing toward the palace towers. "You can stay for tonight. Tomorrow I'll help you find your way home. Or," her voice lowered, "I'll take you to the guards myself, if you promise not to run." He didn't move, just kept staring, eyes wide with disbelief, as if he didn't understand kindness when it stood before him. So Erin took his hand, small, cold, hesitant, and led him quietly back through the servants' halls, careful not to be seen. By the time they reached her chambers, he was half asleep. She sat him by the fire, fetched a tray of bread and broth, and watched him eat in silence. "See? No harm done," she said gently. "Eat slowly. You'll make yourself sick if you rush." Later, when she drew a bath to clean the dirt from his skin, she froze. Across the boy's back were faint, dark scars, thin lines, some old, some newer, the marks of a whip. Erin's hand trembled. "Who did this to you?" The boy turned his head slightly, his eyes full of quiet sorrow. But he said nothing. Something broke inside her. She wrapped him in a soft clothing, her movements tender and slow, and whispered, "It's all right. You don't have to tell me. Not tonight." When he finally fell asleep, curled beneath her spare blanket, Erin sat beside the bed, watching the faint rise and fall of his breathing. "Maybe that's why you didn't want to go home," she murmured. "Because home hurt you." She looked toward the door, afraid someone might hear her voice. But there was only silence, the same lonely silence that filled her life. Only now it didn't feel so empty anymore. The following days passed quietly, too quietly for anyone to notice the secret living. Inside the Queen's chambers, Erin moved carefully, every action deliberate, every sound hushed. She dismissed her attendants early, claiming headaches or a need for solitude. It wasn't hard. No one questioned the silent queen. After all, she was the forgotten wife of a man who never came. Behind the gilded curtains and polished mirrors of her lonely quarters, a boy now lived. Behind the gilded curtains and polished mirrors of her lonely quarters, a boy now lived, small, watchful and half afraid of every sound in the hallway. At first, he said nothing. He ate what she gave him, sat beside her when she read aloud from her books, and sat quietly in the little space she'd made for him inside her wardrobe. A secret corner with pillows and blankets. She hid him there, anytime she stepped out to get something. He didn't say much, always silent, like he doesn't know how to speak or form words. But on the fourth morning, while she was brushing his hair after a bath, that he finally spoke. His voice was small and uncertain, as though the words hurt to use. "Roland." She blinked, pausing mid-stroke. "Roland, my name," he whispered. "Roland." She smiled, soft and genuine, the first true smile she'd worn in months. "That's a fine name," he didn't reply, only looked down at his hands. But after that, he spoke a little more each day, about simple things. The weather, the food, the birds he could see from the window. When she asked where he lived, his answers came slow and uneven. His grandmother had passed away not long ago, and he'd been left with an aunt who didn't like him much. Erin didn't need to ask more. She'd seen the scars. The thought of sending him back to that house made her chest tighten, but she knew it couldn't last this way. "Soon," she would tell herself, folding the boy's small clothes. "I'll tell the guards. They'll find someone who cares for him." But every time she looked at him, the way he tried so hard to hide his fear, the quiet way he listened when she read, she found another reason to wait one more day. Days became a week, then two. She learned to move differently, slower, quieter. She fetched her own food sometimes, poured her own bath, kept her doors locked and lights dim. No one cared enough to ask questions. The maids only whispered that Her Majesty preferred solitude, that she'd gone strange from being ignored. It suited her perfectly. In the silence, she taught Roland how to read. His small fingers traced the letters on the page, his eyes brightening with wonder each time she sounded out the words. Sometimes he would fall asleep while listening to her, and she'd pull him into a hug, brushing his hair from his eyes. "You listen better than any courtier I've ever met," she teased once. It amazed her how something so small could warm a place that had been cold for years. Yet beneath the peace, she always felt the edge of fear. Fear that someone might notice. Fear that the guards would discover him. Fear that the king, if he even remembered she existed, might punish her for daring to care about a child who wasn't hers. At night, as Roland slept, she'd sit by his side, whisper to herself, "It won't last. I have to take him back. He has to live a normal life, not locked up here. I'm powerless to protect him." The king didn't want her. The court ignored her, and even her title couldn't shield her from what she truly was. A maid pretending to be a queen. Still, when she looked at the small boy sleeping soundly beside the hearth, she couldn't help but think. For the first time in years, her chambers didn't feel empty. The next day, Erin had barely set the steaming bowl of broth down on the small table when she noticed the quiet. Roland wasn't breathing in the little alcove by the wardrobe. At first she thought he must be sleeping. Children slept anywhere, but when she parted the curtain, the blankets lay undisturbed. His small boots were gone. Her heart dropped like a stone. For a second she could not think. Then the room filled with an urgent, cold noise. The footstep in the corridor. The rustle of servants' skirts. The distant clatter of dishes. Ordinary sounds that mocked her panic. Roland was gone. She moved through the chambers like a ghost, checking every hidden place she had made for him. Behind the tapestries, under the low table on the bed. Nothing. The little chair where he liked to sit by the window was empty. The book he'd left open on the floor. A smudge of dirt on the sill told her he had been here, not long ago, but it stopped there. Erin's breath came sharp and small. She should have summoned the guards, she thought. She should have told the head attendant. But the thought of exposing the fact that she had harbored a child in her quarters, of admitting that her gilded bed had been used to hide someone who wasn't hers, made her hands go cold. She slipped out into the halls. No maid questioned her. Curiosity had long since been trained out of them by the palace's indifference. She moved through the servants' quarters, calling his name in whispers, checking the kitchens, the stables, the gardener's sheds. Each place answered with silence and the faint smell of hay or soap. Time crept away. The sun tilted, shadows grew long. She ran and followed the path that led to the outer garden where she had first found him. The fountain's water gleamed silver. Pigeons pecked at the margins. Her lungs burned, but she called again, "Roland," until her voice was hoarse. After searching the entire palace for what seems like an eternity, she saw him. But the king himself stood in front of him. The king POV. The evening breeze carried the scent of rain and roses through the king's courtyard. Shadows stretched long beneath the marble arches. A group of attendants followed their king, their steps precise and silent. Dressed in his red imperial robe, King Chaol of Dareth paused suddenly. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. The person hair, soft and pale, kissed by sunlight, moved with the breeze in the exact way Leora's had once done. Chaol froze. His breath caught in his chest. For the first time in years, he thought he saw her by the garden. The image burned painfully, blurring into memory. His wife, smiling in that same garden. He called out, moving closer, "Leora." But when the boy turned, it wasn't Leora. It was a child. Still, those eyes. They were the same shade of blue as his wife. It's not possible. No. Chaol's voice came low and uncertain. "What is your name, boy?" Roland didn't answer. He only stared, holding his flower tightly to his chest, as if it were his only friend. "Where are your parents?" Chaol tried again, softer this time, but the child said nothing, silent as stone. His guards exchanged uneasy glances. One of them whispered, "Perhaps he's a maid's child, your majesty, or lost from the lower quarters." Chaol, as he tries to touch him, "No, it can't be only the Selene." But the gesture seemed to frighten the child. Roland flinched and stepped back, small body folding inward. At that motion, the Emperor's hand froze in the air. Then Arryn appeared. She had run full tilt from the hedges, breathless, cheeks flushed, and without any thought beyond the single, terrible one: protect him. She put herself between Chaol and Roland, as if that small act could shield the child from everything the palace had once been. Her hair had come loose and her gown was smudged with dirt. She looked like a woman who had lost more than sleep. "Your Majesty," she said in the quick, respectful voice she kept for such moments. And then, in a breath that trembled with something else, "I was looking for him. He belongs to one of my maid. He strayed when we walked to the gardens. I am sorry for the trouble." Chaol's expression did not change. He simply looked between them. He did not speak. Arryn swallowed. She lifted Roland's hand gently, feeling the small fingers cling to her skirt. The boy's face was pale but unbroken. He watched the Emperor with a distant interest, as if watching some slow sea. Chaol didn't stop her. He'd just stare at them leave. Then to one of the guard, "Find out which maid he belongs to and report to me." When the guards had gone and the sound of hooves faded, Chaol did not return to his chamber. He walked instead to the wing that had been closed since Leora passed away. His late wife's rooms perpetual as a garden of frozen things. The hallway smelled of old roses and dust. The door stood shut, the lock cold and small in his palm. "There's no way," he told the empty corridor, though he knew he said it only to steady himself. "There's no way that child would have those eyes." Leora was the only princess of Selene, and her brother the king who was not married yet. Those eyes. It was said the first emperor was blessed by the moon, and his descendants bore blue eyes. Proof of divine right to rule. The thought grew louder. The midwife had said both mother and child gone. He can't be my son. So is either the maid have an affair with a royal from Selene Kingdom, or he turned and reached for the door and then stopped. The door would open, and everything he had fled from would stand before him. The empty bed, the stillness, the accusation in the absence. He could not face it. Instead, he leaned his forehead against the cool wood and let the guilt he had taught himself to carry press him down. "You left them," he muttered, voice small and fierce. "You went to war and left her to bear the pain alone. You are a fool." He turned away finally. He walked to his room and poured himself a drink, tasting on his tongue the harsh metal of regret. The garden sight, the child with the white flower. For the first time in a long while, the palace's silence answered him back with more than emptiness. It answered him with a question he could not yet name. Erin POV. Minutes later in Erin chamber. Erin. Roland. Breathless, her voice sharp with worry. Do you have any idea how far you wandered off? The boy looked up, startled, his soft eyes shimmering with guilt. He held the small flower out to her with both hands. For you, he said simply. Erin froze mid-scold, blinking down at him. What? Roland's lips pressed together nervously, his voice quiet. You do everything for me. You feed me, protect me. I don't have anything to give you. So, I went to get this. Her throat tightened. For a moment, the world seemed to still. She had never been given anything before. Not out of kindness, not out of love. Not even a simple flower. Her eyes softened, and before she could stop herself, tears slipped down her cheeks. You, silly boy, she whispered, kneeling before him. No one's ever given me flowers before. He blinked in confusion, then smiled. A pure, innocent smile that cracked something inside her. She pulled him into a hug, her voice trembling. Thank you, Roland. Thank you for thinking of me. He hugged her back tightly, small hands clutching her sleeve. I'm sorry for wandering off. She laughed softly through her tears. Just don't ever do that again, all right? You scared me, that night. Erin tucked him into bed and lingered by his side for a long time, brushing his hair away from his forehead. His blonde strands glowed faintly under the candlelight, his soft breathing the only sound of peace in her world. But peace was the very thing she no longer felt. What am I going to do? She whispered to herself, pressing a hand against her chest. If they find out, if the Emperor learned that she had taken in a child with no permission, it wouldn't just be her head on the line. Roland would be taken away. Maybe I'm selfish, she thought miserably. Maybe I should have let him go the day I found him. Maybe he belongs somewhere else. But then she remembered the way he'd hugged her. The small flower still lay on her table, already wilting. No, she said softly. I can't give him up. Not yet. Her thoughts wandered to the king. To the way he had looked at Roland in the garden earlier. That frozen, haunted expression like he had seen a ghost. The next morning, Erin's world flipped upside down. The headmaid approached her with an unexpected expression, smiling so bright like she won an award. Your Highness, His Majesty, has summoned you. She blinked, thinking she had misheard. Me? The king? Yes, for breakfast. Her mind went blank. Breakfast? With the king? The maid gave a tight nod. He said specifically that you should come. By the time she reached the Emperor's private dining hall, her heart was pounding so loud it could drown out an army. She bowed low, her voice trembling. Good morning, Your Majesty. The Emperor looked up from his seat, sharp, poised, unreadable. He gestured calmly to the chair across from him. Sit. She obeyed, every movement stiff with nerves. The silence was suffocating. The sound of silverware against porcelain echoed in the grand hall. He ate slowly. She barely touched her food, sneaking glances at him and then quickly looking away. Her thoughts spiraled. Was it because of yesterday? Did he find out about Roland? Did I say something wrong? Am I going to the dungeons?
Kale. Meanwhile, across the table, the Emperor's expression never wavered. He barely heard the clinking of his utensils. His mind was elsewhere, on that child's face, those eyes. The report from his guards last night was clear. No record of a servant's child fitting that description. No maid with a son that small exists within the palace registry, meaning she lied. But why? He studied Erin carefully. She sat there, fidgeting with the hem of her gown, trying her hardest to look composed. Either that child is her son, meaning she has a lover with a royal in Selene Kingdom, or she's working with them to eliminate me. His voice broke the silence. Do you have anything to tell me?
Erin froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Then, in a panic, she dropped it, stood up, and bowed deeply. I apologize, Your Majesty. For the way I spoke yesterday, I was in a hurry. It was rude of me, and it won't happen again.
The Emperor blinked. That was not what he meant. But he said nothing for a moment, watching her trembling figure. Sit first, he finally said quietly. She straightened slowly, her head still lowered, and I studied her for a long moment. Is this an act? If she tells me she had a son with her lover before we got married, I will forgive her. As I was about to question her further, Aldrich entered, bowing. Your Majesty, the council awaits your presence, I sighed. Rising from my seat, we'll continue this tomorrow, I said simply, glancing at her once more. Be here at the same hour and answer my questions properly, Queen.
Yes, Your Majesty, she stammered, still unsure what she'd done.
As he walked away, he found himself oddly unsettled. He had never spoken to her properly before. Their marriage had been one of politics, not affection. He had barely looked at her since the ceremony. But yet now, something about her felt different.
Back to Erin. The moment he left, Erin collapsed back into her chair, heart racing. What questions? She whispered to herself in horror. What did he ask me? Did Roland say something? Or did he find out about Roland? Her thoughts tumbled over each other in panic. Then she glanced at the breakfast spread, untouched and gleaming. Her stomach growled. Well, she muttered, it'd be a shame to let all this go to waste. She quickly wrapped a few biscuits and fruit pieces. For Roland, she whispered guiltily. He'll never forgive me if I came back empty-handed. Then she added one more sweet roll. All right, maybe this one's for me. As she tiptoed out of the grand dining hall, pockets full of imperial breakfast, the guards watched her go, utterly confused. The next morning, the tension in the air was so thick she could barely breathe. Again, she was summoned for breakfast with the Emperor. She entered the grand hall quietly, bowing low. Your Majesty. He looked up from his seat, eyes unreadable, and gestured for her to sit. She obeyed, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for the cup before her. Halfway through the silent meal, his voice broke the stillness. Tell me, Lady Erin, he said calmly, about the child. The spoon in her hand stopped mid-air. Her blood ran cold. The child? She stammered. Yes, he said, setting his cup down. The boy you took away from the garden. For a heartbeat, everything went silent inside her. This is it. She swallowed hard, her mind racing. If she said he was a maid's son again, he would ask the maid's name. If she hesitated too long, he'd know she was lying. I don't know what you're talking about, Your Majesty, she said softly, forcing a confused smile. He raised a brow. You don't remember? Oh, that boy, she said quickly, feigning realization. I only saw him once. He seemed lost, so I helped him back to the servant's path. That was all. His gaze sharpened. You're sure? Yes, Your Majesty. I'd never seen him since. The Emperor's jaw tightened. He looked away, a smirk tugging faintly at his lips, the kind that held no amusement. Is that so? But you said he was your maid child. Did you lie to me? Erin, heart pounding. I didn't think this lie through. I'm probably going to get hated for this, but I have to protect Roland. She smiled. Forgive me, Your Majesty. The child looked distressed when you tried to touch him, so I only helped him. Your Majesty. He only watched her for a long, heavy moment before setting his utensils aside. Distressed, you say? Do I look like a monster to scare a child away? Erin. No, Your Majesty, that not. Chaol. Silent. I know you're lying, but I'll give you more time until you're ready to tell me truth. Or else I will do it my way. He stand and leave, her chest constricted, but she didn't show it. She bowed. Chaol to Aldrich. He said quietly, look into all the Queen attendants, their family and friends. And I need a report of everything the Queen does, who she meets, and when she leaves her room. Understood? Aldrich nods. Yes, Your Majesty. Back in her chamber, as she stepped inside, she checked on Roland. The boy slept soundly, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. She sat down on a chair beside him. I have to protect you, she whispered. But how? What should I do? What should I say? There's no he's going to hurt me, right? Her mind spun with options. She could send him back to his aunt, but that cruel woman would treat him like a stray dog. And Roland won't agree. But if the king's men started searching the palace, I need to hide him somewhere, she murmured. She began scouting abandoned rooms in the West Wing, old storage chambers no one had entered in years. As she walked the dim corridor later that night, candle in hand, that then she saw him, the king. He was walking unsteadily, his cloak half unfastened, the faint scent of wine heavy in the air. Aaron's heart lurched. What is he doing here? I thought the king's chamber is in the east. But he's drunk. She quickly turned around, murmuring, I didn't see him. I didn't see him. But before she could slip away, his voice stopped her. You there? She froze. Bring me a cup of water, he said, his voice low but firm. To my room. Yes, Your Majesty, she said quietly, bowing and hurrying to obey. When she returned with the cup, he was slumped against the bed, eyes half closed, the flickering lamplight casting shadows across his face. He looked tired, not in the way of kings, but of men. She set the cup beside him and turned to leave. Then her hand caught hers. Aaron gasped softly. His grip was firm, trembling slightly. His eyes were glazed but filled with pain. I'm sorry, he whispered. It's all my fault. Everything. Her lips parted. Your Majesty, because of me, he murmured, voice breaking. If I hadn't gone to war, if I hadn't left you. He bowed his head, shoulders shaking, the weight of years of guilt pouring out at last. Aaron's heart ached. Slowly, she sat down beside him, her voice soft and steady. I know she will say, it's not your fault. She knew you did what you had to. She knows you had to protect your people, that's why she let you go. And I'm sure she will be sad to see you this way. He let out a shaky breath, eyes still unfocused. But I failed you. Aaron hesitated, then gently rested a hand over his trembling one. You loved her, she whispered. That love doesn't fade because of mistakes. It only hurts because it's real. He looked at her. Truly looked at her. For the first time. For a heartbeat. He seemed to see something else. Someone else, reflected in her eyes. You sound just like her, he murmured. Aaron's heart stopped. Before she could reply, his grip loosened. His head tilted slightly as sleep overtook him, exhaustion and wine finally claiming their hold. She stayed there for a moment, staring at the man who was both emperor and broken husband. Then she quietly adjusted his blanket over his shoulders and rose. Rest, Your Majesty, she whispered. You've punished yourself enough. As she left his chamber, the wind outside howled softly against the windows. And for the first time, Aaron realized how fragile he truly was, but she doesn't know how dangerously close their fates were beginning to intertwine. The morning sun poured softly through the tall curtains, painting gold across the Emperor's chambers. For the first time in years, Chaol woke without the familiar weight pressing against his chest. His mind was quiet, his breath steady. The nightmares that usually clawed at him through the night had been replaced by something gentler. He turned his head on the pillow, staring at the faint light dancing across the marble floor. Why does my head feel lighter today? He wondered, frowning slightly. Then a faint memory surfaced, a soft voice in the dark, trembling yet warm. Words he could hardly piece together, but the tone lingered like a whisper against his skin. It's not your fault. Chaol sat up slowly, rubbing his temples. He remembered that voice, the gentleness of it, the touch on his hand that had steadied him when he thought it was all just another dream. A knock broke the silence. Enter, he said quietly. His chief guard stepped in, bowing low. Your Majesty, you ordered a report on the Queen's movements yesterday. Chaol's eyes sharpened instantly. Go on, the guard. After the morning breakfast, Her Majesty stayed in her chambers. The maid brought her food which she ate indoor, and later, She was seen walking through the West Wing, entering several unused rooms, as if she were searching for something or someone. She then encountered you in the corridor, brought you water at your request, and remained in your chamber briefly before returning to her quarters. Cale's fingers stilled. His gaze drifted toward the balcony. So, he murmured under his breath, it was her. The memory sharpened, her voice soothing him, her hand trembling slightly as she tried to calm him. That wasn't a dream. The woman who'd comforted him last night was Erin. He dismissed the guard with a wave of his hand. Continue observing her quietly. Report directly to me, no one else. When the door closed, Cale leaned back in his chair, lost in thought. What is she hiding so carefully? For a long moment he sat there, the morning light brushing across his face. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if the warmth in his chest was suspicion, or the memory of her voice still echoing softly in his heart. Days passed. The Emperor had grown tired of waiting. For days, she denied it. Calm eyes, steady hands, the same polite tone. I don't know what your Majesty speaks of, she'd say. And somehow those words, spoken so softly, always managed to ease the ache in his chest. That was what annoyed him most, because every time she spoke, that strange warmth returned, like a faint echo of a memory long buried. It crept through the walls he had built over the years, loosening something inside him. At breakfast, when he questioned her again about the boy, she answered gently, I told you, Your Majesty. I left the boy by the gate. Cale anger building up in him. He knows she's lying. This is a serious matter concerning a Selene heir in his land. Yet when she spoke, his anger dulled. His body relaxed. He frowned, gripping his cup. You should keep talking, he murmured without thinking. She blinked, startled. Pardon. He realized what he said, cleared his throat and muttered, Your voice is less unpleasant than most. Her lips twitched slightly, the ghost of a smile that never fully appeared. Then she bowed her head again, hiding it. That night he couldn't sleep. The guards had searched quietly, but found no child, no maid with a son, no clue. So the Queen was lying or protecting something. Either way, he would find out. He rose before dawn and walked through the silent corridors toward her quarters. A place he had never entered. He had avoided it, avoided her, avoided everything that reminded him of the past. But tonight, he told himself it was only duty, only to expose a lie. He looks around and noticed there were no guards or maid. He thought to himself they're changing shift or something. Then he knocks, thinking to himself why she locked the door though. She opens the door and it smelled faintly of lavender and candle wax. The fire burned low and books were scattered across a small table. Books, not jewels, not perfumes. She looked up in shock. Your Majesty? He didn't answer at once. His eyes roamed the room, taking in every corner. The air felt warm, lived in, not like his own cold, echoing chambers. There were traces of care here. She took a closer step. Forgive me. I wasn't told you would. I didn't come to be announced, he said quietly. His tone was sharp, but not cruel. I came to see for myself. She froze. See what? He took a step closer, scanning the room again. The curtains, the wardrobe, the folded blankets. His voice dropped. The child. Her heart raced. Your Majesty, do not lie to me again. His gaze locked onto hers, dark and unreadable. Where is he? Erin's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him the truth. That the boy was harmless, fragile, that she only wanted to protect him. But fear clamped her tongue. From the rumors, she knows the king wasn't a good person. So she bowed instead. There is no child here. He studied her for a long, silent moment. And then something shifted in his eyes. Not anger, not disbelief. Confusion. Because her fear wasn't selfish or deceitful. It was protective. Look at me, he said quietly. She hesitated but raised her gaze. And just like that, something broke inside him. Her eyes weren't cunning. They were tired. Honest in a way that hurt. The warmth he'd felt before spread through him again. Unwelcome but undeniable, he stepped back slightly, his voice low. If there truly is no child, then you have nothing to fear. But if there is, he paused, his jaw tightening. Tell me before someone else does. Then he turned to leave, but stopped by the door. And Queen Arryn, he said softly without looking back. Whatever you were sewing just now, you dropped a thread. Her hands trembled. How careless, she was amending Roland's clothes, but hide it when she heard a knock. When the door closed behind him, her knees gave out, and she pressed a hand to her chest, whispering to herself, He'll find out soon. I can't hide him forever. Meanwhile, down the hall, the Emperor walked back to his quarters, fists clenched. He had come to expose a liar. Instead, he had found a woman whose presence made the air easier to breathe. And he hated that truth most of all. Why is her dress so thin? He thought to himself, and maybe tonight's sleep won't come easily. Days later, the night air was heavy and still, the candles in Arryn's chamber flickering low. Roland had been coughing since dawn, but now his small body burned with fever. His breath came in shallow gasps. His cheeks flushed a frightening red. Roland, she whispered, brushing the damp curls from his forehead. It's all right, sweetheart. You'll be fine. But her voice shook. She pressed a wet cloth to his skin again, only for the heat to return moments later. All day she'd tried everything. Cold water, herbs, even the old remedies she'd learned as a maid. But nothing was working. The palace physicians couldn't be summoned. If anyone found out the boy was with her, questions would follow. She sat back, heart pounding, eyes darting toward the small box where she kept her coins. But she knows her few silver pieces won't get anything. Not enough for proper medicine. Her gaze drifted to the wardrobe across the room. The dresses she'd been given as queen. Silks she'd never worn. Jewels she never touched. Slowly, she stood and opened the wardrobe, her fingers brushing against the dresses. A sad smile ghosted her lips. I suppose I won't need this anymore, she whispered. Chaol, the night was unusually still. The golden lamps flickered faintly in the king's study as Chaol leaned back, reading through documents. A knock came at the door, soft and hesitant. Enter, he said, voice low. His head guard, Aldrich, bowed. Your Majesty, about Her Majesty the Queen. Her movements today. Chaol eyes lifting from the parchment. The day hasn't ended yet. Why are you not reporting in the morning like you do? Did something happen to the Queen? Aldrich nodded slowly. I think so, sire. She was in her chamber all day, but then she went to the market area to purchase medicine, but after selling one of her dresses. Chaol straightened slowly, the chair scraping back. Selling a dress? For medicine? Is she unwell? Beside the Queen has her own fund. Why did she have to sell her dress? Is it not given to her every month to get anything she wants? Aldrich. It seems not, Your Majesty. From my findings today, it seems the head maid has been redrawing her funds. Chaol voice laced with anger, fist clenched. What? Since when? Aldrich. I'm unsure, Your Majesty, but from my little findings, only dresses and jewelry were given to her a few times. Chaol already standing. So you're telling me, Aldrich, the queen of this kingdom, my wife is sick and she has to sell her dress to get medicine? A sudden flare of anger twisted in Chaol's chest. And you're telling me this now? He snapped. The guard dropped to one knee immediately. My apologies, Your Majesty. I just found out. Enough. Chaol cut him off, turning sharply with anger toward the door. Bring me that head maid and call the royal physician immediately. He turned to the hallway, his steps echoing heavily across the marble floor. His thoughts burned. They dare neglect her, even if she's nothing more than a queen in name. She is still the queen of this land. My queen. I guess it's all my fault for neglecting her. I am to blame for all this. As he walks towards her chamber, he told himself it was only about respect, about the image of the throne. But the way his pulse quickened betrayed him. When he reached her quarters, the lamps were dim, and no servants, no knight stood guard. Guess I have some people to get rid of tonight. He tried to open the door, lock. Why did she lock the door? He knocked once. No answer. He waited, jaw tightening. Knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. A thought sliced through him. What if she's fainted? He drew back, ready to force the door open when at last the handle turned. The door creaked open, revealing Erin standing there in her nightgown, surprise flashing in her eyes. "Your Majesty?" she stammered, bowing quickly. Chaol stood there, broad shoulders framed by the faint candlelight in the hall. His dark hair was damp from the night air, and his eyes sharp as ever scanned her face. But suddenly his expression softened. His voice remained firm. "You didn't open the door. Are you okay?" She blinked, trying to steady her breathing. "Forgive me, I was resting. I didn't expect. Are you unwell?" He interrupted, stepping closer, touching her forehead. "If you're sick, you should have summoned the doctor. You shouldn't hide it." Erin's confusion deepened. "Sick? I'm perfectly fine, Your Majesty." For a moment, Chaol just looked at her. Her face was pale, but her eyes steady. He realized how close he was standing and stepped back, the heat in his voice fading into quiet restraint. "I see." He cleared his throat. "My apologies. I overreacted." He turned slightly, as if to leave, inwardly scolding himself. "What am I doing? Barging into her chambers like this? She think I've lost my mind." But then, something caught his attention. From the corner of his eye behind the curtains, he saw it. A small, frail leg under the curtain. He froze. Erin's body stiffened instantly, following his gaze. In a heartbeat, she moved, stepping in front of the screen, her voice trembling slightly. "Your Majesty. Please." "It's nothing." Chaol's eyes darkened. "Who's that?" "Please," she whispered, lowering her head. "He was hurt and lost. I couldn't leave him outside the gates. I only wanted to help him." Chaol, already moving. "If you found a sick person, you shouldn't just hide them in your chamber. You should have called the physician. If you want to help them." Just then he opened the curtain to see the child. Blonde hair and blue eyes. Cheeks flushed from fever. "What is he doing here?" He immediately carried the boy up to bed. "I thought you said he was a servant child, and you know nothing of him. You lied to me. Why, Erin?" "I thought..." He cut her off, voice laced with anger. "Chaol, enough. Pass me a water and towel first. You have a lot to explain later," he said. But suddenly, as Roland turned, he sees it. There, etched on the boy's arm, was a mark. A birthmark shaped like a crescent flame. His body ran cold. What? Only one bloodline bore that mark, his Eldarin royal. He has one too. His fingers hovered above it, trembling as memories tore through his mind. The night his first child was born, when he returned from the battlefield. The chaos, the midwife's pale face when she said, "He didn't make it, Your Majesty." He'd buried that grief deep, convinced his heir was gone before he'd even held him. But now, it couldn't be coincidence. Aldrich entered, bowed nervously. "Your Majesty, the head maid and royal physician are here." Chaol's voice came hoarse. "Leave us." The man hesitated, then obeyed. Silence returned, thick and suffocating. Chaol turned slowly to Erin, his gaze sharp as a blade. "How is he here?" Her lips parted. "What?" "The boy," Chaol said, his tone deceptively calm. "Where did you get him?" "I found him outside the gate. He was hurt, alone. I only wanted to help him." "Help him?" Chaol's voice froze, echoing through the chamber. "Do you take me for a fool?" "Erin." He advanced on her, and she stepped back, trembling. "That mark," he pointed toward the bed, eyes blazing. "That mark belongs to my bloodline. So tell me, Erin, did you conspire with Selene Kingdom? Did you?" Her eyes widened. "No, don't lie to me. Again," he cut in, voice icy. "How did he have that birthmark?" and blue with that blonde curly hair. Tell me, Erin, you hide him here, so you should know, right? Your Majesty, please, she cried. I have done nothing wrong. He's only a child. He needs help, please. Chaol. Lies. How did you see a hurt child that is not yours? And you hid him here for days. Erin falling to her knees. Yes, that's the truth, he scoffed. The truth, you say? What is the truth? You have been denying. You don't know the child I spoke of in the garden these past few days. My queen, Erin. I did lie to you. But I know nothing of him being your son or heir. Chaol stared down at her. The woman he had allowed into his court, his life, his home. The woman who had been a maid before he chose her. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. I should have known when Edmund Fool sent a maid to my palace under the name of a queen. That something was up. Erin's heart stopped. He knew. He knew everything. That she had once served in the royal household. Please, she whispered. Even if you won't believe me, help him. He's burning up, Hill. Don't touch him, Chaol snapped. Not another word from your lying mouth. She flinched as if struck. Then, softer, almost broken, he muttered, Take her away. The guards entered holding her. She turned toward him one last time, tears streaming. I didn't do anything, Your Majesty. I just helped him. But you believe I schemed with people to hide your heir. Then so be it. Just promise me you'll help Roland. Please. Chaol's eyes flickered, but his face remained cold. Enough of your act, he said with a faint, bitter smile. You've played it well enough. As the guards seized her arms, she struggled once, then stopped, looking past them toward Roland. The boy stirred weakly, his small voice cracking. Erin. Erin smiled through her tears. It's all right, sweetheart. You'll be fine. Her voice broke as the guards dragged her away. Chaol turned back to the boy. He sat on the edge of the bed, brushing the boy's hair gently. It's all right, he murmured, forcing his voice to steady. You're safe now. He looked up, eyes dark and determined. Tell the physician to come in and send for the midwife, he commanded, and the late Queen's nanny. Bring them both here, Aldrich bowed. Yes, Your Majesty. Chaol remained there looking at the child. If this is truly my son, if they took him from me, his fists clenched. I will find the truth, he promised under his breath. The air was cold and damp, heavy with the smell of rust and stone. Erin sat on the hard floor, her gown torn at the hem. The faint candlelight flickered against the walls, casting long, trembling shadows. For hours, she said nothing. Only the quiet sound of dripping water echoed in the stillness. Maybe this was what she deserved. She had hidden a child in the palace, the Emperor's child. Even if she hadn't known, the guilt pressed down like chains heavier than the ropes. Her heart twisted as her thoughts wandered to Roland. Was he safe? Was he breathing better now? She could still see his small hand clutching hers, his soft voice whispering her name even in fevered dreams. Tears slid down her cheek. I didn't know, she whispered into the dark. I didn't know he was your father. She remembered the mark, the small shape on his chest, and Chaol's expression when he saw it. The shock, the fury, the disbelief. If the child was truly the Emperor's, then someone had lied. The midwife, perhaps. Or someone powerful enough to make a child vanish. She lifted her head weakly, calling out to the guard standing near the door. Please. The boy. Has he been attended to? Is he all right? The guard didn't answer. He kept his eyes fixed ahead, the silence colder than before. Erin murmured, her voice cracking. Just tell me he's alive. Finally, the man glanced her way, his expression hard. Enough of your act, Your Majesty, he said bitterly. You should be praying, not asking questions. His Majesty will decide your punishment at dawn. Maybe your head will be asterisked before sunset tomorrow. Her breath hitched. Her head. She lowered her gaze, her hands trembling as she whispered a quiet prayer. Not for herself, but for Roland. Elsewhere, the palace glowed with firelight. Chaol sat in his study, wine untouched beside him. The room was silent, but his thoughts roared like a storm. How dare she? He clenched his fist, knuckles white. The image of her tear-streaked kept flashing in his mind. Her trembling voice begging for the boy's safety. She hid him, he muttered under his breath. She hid my son and lied to my face. He rose abruptly, pacing the room. The council's voices echoed faintly in his memory. Their insistence that he remarry, that the kingdom needed an heir, that his grief had lasted too long. He had agreed only to silence them, to stop the endless political noise. A queen had been chosen for him, quiet, obedient, harmless. He hadn't even looked at her properly when the vows were said. She was a maid once and knew the princess passed away. He knew that, but he didn't care about anything. He'd given her a crown, a title, and a silent promise to stay out of her way. And still, she betrayed him. His jaw tightened as he remembered her soft words that night. The trembling voice telling him it wasn't his fault, that he still had people to protect. Her hands had been gentle, her eyes kind. He laughed bitterly, and I believed her. He'd actually thought she understood him, that she had no hidden motives. How foolish, how utterly foolish. She had comforted him like a lover one night, and deceived him the next. She's clever, he muttered, staring into the flames. She played innocent, gained my trust, and then, using my son, to what end? But even as rage burned through him, something uneasy stirred beneath it. Something quiet and unwelcome. The way she looked at the boy. The way she cried when they took her away. Was that really the face of a liar? He shoved the thought aside, glaring into the dark. No, I won't fall for her tricks again. This night, he said quietly, I'll have the truth, no matter what it costs. The night bled into dawn. The sky outside the palace tinted with grey and storm clouds. Inside the imperial hall, candlelight flickered as Chaol sat on his throne holding a sword. When suddenly Aldrich opened the door. The midwife is here, Your Majesty. Unfortunately, the Queen's nanny passed away a year ago. Chaol, bring her forth. The trembling woman entered, the midwife. Her hair was grey and wild, her eyes darting around in fear as she was forced to be before King Chaol. Chaol's voice came out low, measured, but heavy with restrained fury. It's been a long time, the woman. Greetings, Your Majesty. He took a step closer, shadows gathering across his face. Well, I have something to ask you. You were there the night the Empress gave birth. You saw everything. Silence. He leaned down slightly, his tone sharpening like a blade. You will tell me what happened that night, right? The midwife swallowed hard, her hands trembling. Yes, Your Majesty, the Queen and the child. They both passed away, Your Majesty. I did all I could. Chaol's jaw tightened. Lies, he swung his sword. I don't intend to use this tonight, so I will ask again. And this time, think carefully before you speak, because I found a boy, a child, with the royal scar only my heir should bear since I have no family. And he has my wife's hair and eyes. The woman's face paled, her lips trembling. Chaol's voice dropped to a growl. The only reason I haven't used this on you is because you are one of the few people who cared for the late queen. So speak before I lose my temper. The midwife. That's the true, Your Majesty. The sword's steel hissed as it was drawn on the floor. If you won't speak the truth, he said coldly, then I'll silence you for good. And then, the midwife screamed, the words bursting out like venom. Like you did to those you love? You should have seen your end in that battlefield 5 years ago. Chaol froze. What? Did you say? The Queen hated you. The midwife spat, her voice cracking with rage. Watch your tongue. Aldrich barked, striking her across the back. But she only laughed bitterly, the sound echoing like madness in the hall. How could you say you loved her? She hissed. When your marriage was built on battle and deceit, you call it love. It was an alliance. Chaol's knuckles whitened on his sword. Shut up. That's not the truth. That's not what I asked you. And that battle was started by her kingdom. They brought it to our borders first, and so they offered her to you, a peace gift to end their own fight. The woman shouted, You think she wanted you. She was the daughter of Selene, and she despised you. She tried everything to eliminate you. Enough. Kale roared, but his voice shook. Not with anger alone, but something far deeper. The midwife's eyes gleamed with a cruel, broken satisfaction falling to the floor. When Selene planned another war 5 years ago, it was meant to end you. That was their plan. Her plan. Since she can't do it in your own kingdom, because they'll immediately suspect her. Kale's sword slipped slightly, the weight of her words crushing him. She hoped the throne would pass to your unborn son. But when news came that you survived, that you won, she went into labor too soon. The woman's voice trembled. She passed away cursing your name. Kale staggered back, his expression hollow. No, she told her nanny, the midwife continued, to keep the boy away from you. Because you deserve to be in pain. To live all your life knowing she ended carrying your stupid child. Because she said you don't deserve to be loved. After eliminating her father, Kale's breath left him like a blade to the chest. His sword clattered to the floor. The midwife sneered, voice breaking into sobs. The Queen Leora passed away because of you. If only you never came back from that battle, she would still be alive. You were a curse to her from the start. Kale raised his hand weakly. Stop, but she screamed over him, thrashing. You ended her. You destroyed everything. The guards lunged forward, pinning her down as she struggled and shouted one last time. May you live long enough to drown in your guilt. They dragged her away, her voice fading into the corridor. Kale stood frozen. The hall was silent, save for the faint echo of his own breathing. The words replayed again and again in his head. She hated you. She wanted you gone. His knees nearly buckled as he gripped the edge of the chair, eyes burning. All this time, she hated me because I ended her father, but her father took away every single family members I had. I lost everybody because of a battle her father started 8 years ago. I spared her and her younger brother. He whispered. He'd carried guilt for years. Guilt that he couldn't save her, that his absence during the battle cost her life. But he'd still loved her, mourned her, worshipped her memory as something pure, even though the marriage was alliance. And now? Now he was told she had plotted his end, that she'd cursed him even as she brought his son into the world. He pressed his hand over his eyes, shaking. No, she wouldn't. She said she loved me, but even as he said it, the truth clawed at him. The battle records, the suspicious silence from Selene. Every night she avoided him. His chest tightened painfully. He remembered her smile, her laughter, the way she touched his cheek the night before he rode to battle. Was all of that a lie too? He staggered toward the wall, slamming his fist against it. I loved you, he muttered hoarsely. I loved you. The torches flickered as his voice cracked into the silence. You should have hated me. You should have ended me yourself. He sank to his knees, fist hitting the floor. Leora, tears blurring his vision. As he crashed to the floor, all the guilt he'd carried turned to ashes, replaced by something colder. Betrayal. The dungeon was silent except for the dripping of water from the ceiling. Erin sat curled in the corner, her hands clasped together for warmth. She hadn't eaten. Sleep didn't come. When she heard the guards whisper earlier, they say the midwife spoke the truth. The late queen hated his majesty. Imagine she planned his end and took away his child. The words sank into Erin's chest like stones. So that was what happened, she thought all night. That was the pain he'd carried all this time. She looked up as though she could see the king's face. Stern, unreadable, now broken with grief. For the first time, she didn't think of her own fear, but of him. How it must feel to love someone who wanted you gone. Suddenly a guard approached the gate. Get up, one said. His Majesty summons you. Erin's heart tightened. So this was it. Her end. She thought of Roland's laugh. The way his tiny hand always reached for hers in sleep. I deserve this, she told herself silently. After all, she hid the king's son. It was a crime. The heavy doors to the emperor's chamber swung open. She saw him and froze. Kale looked nothing like the man she had seen just a few hours ago. His eyes were hollow, sleepless. His skin was pale, his hair disheveled. There was a strange stillness in him, the kind that comes after too many tears have already fallen, as he steps forward, telling the guards to leave. For a moment, she forgot her fear. "Are you all right? Have you been crying?" she wanted to ask. Then his voice broke the silence, low, raw, and trembling as he covers her with his coat. "Aaron," he said, "I owe you an apology." Now bowing down in front of her, she blinked, unsure she heard right. "For everything," he continued. "For accusing you. For believing you conspired with Selene Kingdom. For thinking you could ever harm my son." Her lips parted, but no words came. "You saved him," he said softly. "You found the boy I thought was lost forever. My son was hidden from me for 5 years, suffering in the hands of the Selene people for carrying my name, and you brought him back." Aaron froze. The king is actually bowing to her. "Tell me," Kale said, his voice barely steady. "What do you wish? A home? Land? Gold? Your freedom? Say it, and it's yours." Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but is Roland all right?" Kale nodded. "He's safe, resting. You needn't worry." He took a breath, then added gently, "If you wish to live your own life, you may. You were forced into a scheme you didn't deserve. I will not keep you bound to this palace. You have my word and my apology." Aaron's throat tightened. She lowered her gaze. "I forgive you," she whispered. "You didn't know me, and I understand. Finding out you have a child, it must feel like trying to breathe after years of drowning. But Your Majesty, are you all right?" she asked. Kale's eyes softened, smiling softly. "Lady Aaron, even after everything I did to you, you're still kind, Aaron. I won't say that, Your Majesty, as you're the one who went through a lot of things. So I forgive you for not believing me. That's because I lied about Roland first. So it's partially my fault. With that, you need to rest." "Kale, thank you. Lady Aaron, I'm sorry once again." She looked at him for a moment. "Stop apologizing, Your Majesty," she whispered playfully. "But as for my reward, what about a night with the king?" He froze. Her eyes widened. What she meant was a night by his side to care for him. But it came out, rather. Then she stammered, "That's not what." For the first time in what felt like forever, a small, honest laugh escaped him, deep and warm, washing away the tension in the room. Aaron couldn't help but smile too, the corners of her lips trembling with relief. And then, "Aaron!" a small voice echoed as Roland entered into the hall. He threw himself into her arms, hugging her tightly. "I was worried," he cried. She held him close, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, my sweet boy. I scared you." Roland shook his head, sniffling. "It's not your fault. It's his." He pointed accusingly at Kale. The king froze mid-step, unsure what to say. Roland crossed his arms and said firmly, "But I forgive him, since he said he'll protect me. And you too. And he said we can go outside now, see the flowers, go to the library and eat lots of snacks." Aaron blinked in surprise, then laughed softly. "Really? That's so nice of His Majesty." Then Roland looked up at her with a sudden seriousness only children could manage. "You won't leave, right? Even though he's my dad now?" She hesitated, unsure if the king still wants her here. She glanced at Kale. The Emperor gave a slow, reassuring nod, silent permission. Aaron turned back to Roland and hugged him tightly. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "We'll do everything together, just like before." Roland's small laugh filled the hall. "Aaron, why don't you join in, Your Majesty?" Kale stood there for a moment, uncertain, almost afraid. But then, slowly, he stepped forward. And for the first time in years, the King of Eloria wrapped his arms around his son and the woman who had saved him. The storm in his chest quieted. For the first time, it felt like home. 2 months later, the air in the Empire felt lighter, warmer, as though the walls that once carried only silence now breathed again. Today was Roland's day. The day his father, Emperor Kale, presented him before the court. I stood by the edge of the grand hall, my hands slightly trembling, as I watched Kale carried Roland and walk before the nobles. He looked so proud, so sure. "My son," he said, his voice deep and firm. "The crown prince of this empire," he said earlier. And the hall erupted in cheers and bows. Though I was scared at first when Kale told me about it. What if something happened? What if they tried to hurt him if they knew? But Kale assured me, nothing will happen to him, and he will do anything to protect our son. And there he was beside his father with his crown, his blue eyes sparkling brighter than any jewel. Just then Roland comes running straight into my arms. She hugged him tight. "We did well today, didn't we?" she whispered to him. He nodded eagerly. "Can we still go to the garden after this?" "You promised." She laughed, brushing curl from his forehead. "For the past month, we have been going to the garden almost every day. Kale even has to make a small garden by Roland Chamber. And we also eat breakfast together." "Of course with Kale." "Yes," she smiled. "Let's go after, Roland." "With Dad." "Erin." "Yes, with Dad." And for a moment, Kale turned to see them from afar, glancing at them now and then. They looked so perfect. My family. Later that night, the corridors were quiet again, the sound of the celebration fading into soft echoes. Erin sat beside Roland, tucking him to sleep. "Sleep well, my little prince," she whispered, as she stepped out, thinking about having a warm, cool bath. But when she turned, he was there. Kale stood by the doorway, his tall frame leaning lightly against the wall, a faint smile on his face as if he'd been waiting. "Your Majesty," she said quickly, startled. "What are you doing here? Why didn't you come in?" He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I told you to stop calling me that." His voice dropped to a gentle warmth. "Just Kale." She blinked, her face heating. No, I can't, Your Majesty, that's improper." He stepped closer, his eyes teasing. "It's Kale." Her lips curved despite herself. "All right then, Kale." His grin widened. "You see? That wasn't so hard." He looked at me for a long second before saying, quietly, "Thank you, Erin, for everything. For staying by our side these past months, for saving my son. You are indeed the heart of this empire. Kind, patient, and braver than you know." Then, before she could speak, he took her hand, his fingers rough yet careful, and brushed his lips over her knuckles. Her breath caught. "It's nothing," she murmured. "I just couldn't leave a child alone." Kale's eyes softened, but his voice turned playful again. "Still, next time you decide to hide a child without telling me or the guards," he made a mock-serious gesture, "I'll personally charge you with royal abduction." She laughed, covering her mouth. "Then I'll make sure to inform you first, Your Majesty, if I find another child who needs help." He arched a brow. "Kale?" She nodded, whispering his name again. "Kale." The way he smiled then made her heart stumble. The corridor was suddenly too quiet, too still. His hand was around hers, his thumb brushing over her skin. Slow, hesitant, almost searching. Their eyes met. The air between us shifted. Heavy yet tender, filled with everything unspoken. Neither of them moved, but somehow the distance closed. Their faces were close, so close that Erin could feel his breath trembling against hers. The air between them charged with something fragile and new. Her heart thundered softly in her chest as Kale leaned closer, only to pull away at the last second. He stepped back, his expression tightening. I'm sorry," he murmured, voice low and rough. "I shouldn't." Erin blinked, her lips parting in quiet confusion. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale didn't answer at first. His jaw clenched, his eyes cast downward. "Why, Kale?" she pressed, her tone trembling now. "Why do you keep avoiding this thing going on between us?" "It's not that," he said quickly, almost too quickly. "Then what is it?" she asked, taking a hesitant step forward. "Do you see me as filthy because I was a maid?" His eyes lifted sharply, the calm mask breaking. Don't ever say that, he said, his voice firm but softening at the edges. You're my wife. If I considered a maid filthy, I wouldn't have married you. You're not beneath me. Erin, you're my wife and the queen. Then why? She whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. Why are you still running from me? Cale's breath faltered. He stepped back, his hand running through his hair, as if searching for words that refused to come. Because I don't deserve you, he said finally. Not your kindness, not your heart, not after everything I've done, and everything I failed to do. I don't deserve to be loved, Erin. Silence filled the space between them. Then Erin's voice, soft but steady, broke through. Are you going to believe what Leora said? Do you still love her? She added quietly. Cale shook his head, almost violently. No, I will never love a woman who wanted my end, who made my son suffer. Erin took a slow step closer until she stood before him, her eyes gentle but unwavering. That's the more reason you shouldn't believe what she said, she whispered. You say you don't deserve to be loved, but that's not true. Everyone deserves love, Cale. Even those who've been broken by it. His eyes glistened faintly, his breath unsteady. You're not the man she said you were, Erin continued, her voice trembling but firm. You care, Cale. You protect. You feel deeply, even when you try not to. You've only forgotten what it means to be loved. So let me remind you. Her next words came softer, barely a whisper. So let me love you, Cale. The way she said his name shattered something in him. Before she could draw her next breath, his hand reached for her, pulling her. His lips met hers in a desperate, trembling way, gentle at first, then full of the ache of years lost to silence. When he finally pulled back, his voice was raw. I love you, Erin, he whispered. I love you too, she murmured. Cale, and it's not because you saved my son, or because you stayed by his side. You're kind. Erin smiling. I know. Then she said, teasing, I saw the way you were looking at me at the wedding ceremony. I knew you fell in love at first sight then. Cale laughs. All right. I'll admit you caught my eyes then. Erin leans closer. Really, Cale? Yes, my queen. You're beautiful. And so, the emperor who once believed himself cursed to walk through life unloved, finally learned what it meant to be touched by warmth. He learned that love wasn't a fire that destroyed, but the light that stayed, quiet, patient and healing. And the woman who once hid in shadows, bound by fear and duty, found her purpose not in crowns or titles, but in the simple act of giving love without expecting anything in return. Together, they mended what the years had broken. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, laughter echoed, the laughter of a boy named Roland, whose smile became the proof that even the coldest hearts could find home again. The end. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.